What's up, everybody? Long time no see. I know it's been a week since we were live. We had some issues come up last week, so we weren't able to do the newscast. But yeah, we're back again. Tell your friends. Crowdsourced is back. Anyways, welcome again to another episode of the Crowdsourced Politics News Roundup. I am the host and moderator of the Crowdsourced Politics podcast, Cypher, aka Anthony, and we got a lot of news for y'all. But before we get into the news, we got some announcements. So next week I will be attending a debate or discussion panel on Lee the Waterkai's channel on Twitch at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time over there with Lee the Waterkai on Wednesday, talking about some important things, some interesting things that you wouldn't see anywhere else. So we encourage you all to not only check out his program every Wednesday, whatever time he's on, but also be sure to be there on next Wednesday for us, because I will be on there and participating in their debate and discussion panel. We are trying to get on more modern day debates panels. So I reached out to James of Modern Day Debates to try and actually debate Sean Fitzgerald, also known as Actual Justice Warrior, on criminal justice issues. I felt that he's making the rounds again. He's getting a bit bigger again, getting a little more active again, debating the likes of Sam Cedar, being on Tim Pool's channel, etc. And I have some contentions with some of his criminal justice stuff. And if you don't know, I also have a degree in criminal justice and criminology, as well as political science. We are both in a similar vein, but take two different lenses of looking at crime. And I think it would be helpful for the audience to actually see him debate somebody that is as well, if not as well versed in these statistics, because he is a bit more on it on a regular basis, at least as much knowledgeable, and can articulate the positions from more of a left-leaning perspective and see where there's some agreement, because I'm sure that he and I actually agree on things. That debate is not happening, at least not this month, but hopefully somebody will reach out to Actual Justice Warrior and or Sean Fitzgerald, and hopefully we will be able to debate him at some point in the future. So I reached out to Modern Day Debates for that, and it was not in the cards this month. So we'll try to do that shortly. Sorry, it's 107 degrees outside again, so I'm going to be drinking a bit of water. But yeah, so if you know Sean, if you've got good rapport with him and you would like to see that kind of debate with somebody that's is at least, as, if not exactly as knowledgeable, almost as knowledgeable on these issues, then it would be helpful. Go ahead and reach out to him and tell him you should debate me. I DM'd him, all that stuff. And I'm not saying that I am important or anything of that nature. So I don't expect him to actually have received these calls, these DMs, or have looked at them, because, you know, Twitter's kind of trash now, being X and all that. But I try my best. So that's what we're doing. Another announcement from me personally. I might be getting involved in actual local politics here in a few months. I signed up to be part of the Democratic Party as a precinct chair. So it's possible that you might hear me talk about that in the future. Nothing's guaranteed. I just recently signed up for it, but it looks like I might actually be doing that here in a few months. So if that happens, then you'll hear talk about that on this program as well as me talking about it on the channel and some of the insights that I've gotten from doing the work there, because my precinct is actually new in Austin. So it is going to be interesting, because if I am elected into this position, then I will be the person creating the precinct from scratch. So interesting stuff in Travis County. All right. We are still wanting to do Cypher State, so I need to reach out to Tiberius, I need to reach out to Travis, I need to reach out to several other people, and to get that back up and running. I've been busy with work and some personal stuff that's going on, family stuff, so you know how it is. That's why we do this once a week rather than every day. So, but that's where we're at. So we're still wanting to do Cypher State, we're still wanting to do the other stuff. It's just wasn't in the cards this past month due to minor personal issues, nothing serious, just stuff that took time, so I wasn't able to get to it. But yeah, all right, without further ado though, we do have a ton of news that we have to cover, so let's go ahead and start the show proper. There's a tsunami of news to cover, including details of former President Donald Trump's fourth criminal indictment, which preempts our UK coverage this week. Let's jump right into it, starting up with first US national politics. So Congress doesn't return from its summer break until September, but the news continues to roll out from the House. And that's where we start first at here. So the House is getting something of AI or Democratic attention. Things are rumblings. We're doing a program on AI still to come. But yes, so let's talk about it. So Cointelegraph has reported that Democrats from the House have formed a working group on artificial intelligence aimed at introducing new legislation around the new tech sector. The 97-member New Democrat Coalition announced its AI working group on August 15th. The coalition will work with President Biden's administration, stakeholders, and lawmakers from both sides of the aisle to develop, quote, sensible bipartisan policies to address this emerging technology. The group will focus on a range of issues, including how best to leverage AI for growth while still ensuring that workers who stand to lose their jobs as a result of AI can remain employed. Now, this is a big issue here with AI. One of the things that we're going to talk about on that AI essay podcast episode that is not going to be live streamed, it's just going to be on the YouTube channel or wherever you get your podcast streaming at, is that AI is going to replace a lot of jobs. That's something that a lot of people agree on, right? But what people don't agree on is whether or not AI can replace creative works sorts of jobs. Because let's face it, if you're a creative, I am a creative. There are people in the movie industry that are creatives, writers, artists, etc. If you're a creative, you think what you do is special. You think that nobody could do what you do. That's why you do it. That's part of the reason that you drives you, right? It's part of the reason that drives us. I felt that this program could fill a niche inside the Twitch debate community, inside the Twitch political community. So I decided to create this program. But let's be real. A very large amount of people are not looking necessarily for high quality content. They're looking for content that can fill their day while they're doing other things, or something maybe on the background. And they're looking for something like, especially if it's like a picture drawn or something like that, they're looking for something that can create their vision good enough. Not perfect, not necessarily super high quality, but good enough. And we saw this happen in other industries prior to the invention of AI. One of the key ones is fast fashion. Fast fashion came around. People know that the clothing is junk, but it was good enough and cheap enough that people were willing to buy it instead of going for high-end products that filled that void. That were high quality, looked great. Like, this shirt looks great. It's fast fashion bullshit, okay? But it looks good. So it's good enough. Because if you're only spending, I don't know, 20 bucks on a shirt, 30 bucks on a shirt that can last a few months, and then the next thing comes around and you can refresh your wardrobe, why wouldn't you do it? Same thing happened in furniture. Lots of furniture that exists in the United States is cheap garbage. Your IKEA furniture in your house might seem like it is top quality, it is filling your need, but it is mass-produced cheap garbage by comparison to the stuff that used to dominate the American homes. It's cheaper, but people are rotating it out more. They're rotating it out more than they used to, and so it is good enough. People aren't willing to spend $4,000 or $5,000 on a dresser because a $800 to $1,000 dresser is good enough. And that's where we're going to have to see with AI and creative works. One of the popular Twitch channels that exists right now is a 24/7 streamed Trump versus Biden debate that interacts with the chat and is actually very entertaining. There's no reason to assume that similar things cannot be done for art, animation, etc. So that's what we're going to have. We're going to have creative people, low-level creative people, the people that are getting their foot in the door, graduating from college, maybe not even gone to college, but have a small portfolio of work that is good enough, but not great. The barrier to entry is going to get raised, and that's going to eliminate a lot of entry-level positions in these places. So it's not just going to be blue-collar workers. It's not just going to be admin workers. It's not just going to be HR. It's going to go across the entire gamut. Even possibly some low-level psychologist and other low-level things that require interaction from people. Because AI, due to large language models, LLMs, are getting to the point where they can kind of mimic human conversation in a way that will make people feel a little better. That is all that Replica was before it became a porn bot. It was just like, oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Tell me more. Made people feel better. Now it's a porn bot. So that's what things are going to happen. And so when Democrats and Republicans say that AI is going to come for your job, chances are it probably will. And this isn't necessarily a bad thing in and of itself, but if we do not ensure that people can have dignity, can have work, can have income, can pursue their happiness due to the fact that they're now poor because they don't have a job, it's going to cause social problems. Andrew Yang was in fact correct on this. So it's a good thing that this is happening within Congress. Continuing on, though, Representative Derek Klimler of Washington will serve as chair of the AI working group. He told CNBC the primary focus of the working group is to crack down on the spread of misinformation and advanced AI-generated deepfakes, becoming increasingly prevalent online. Quote, "That's the type of thing that requires Congress to get smart and get smart fast," Klimler said. This is also another problem. We're going to do on our AI episode, we're going to cover a lot. We're going to have like a completely AI generated section of our AI. I am going to find, I've already found information and ways for me to clone myself. And we're going to put that in there. And it's going to be good enough. It's going to be decent, even though I'm not going to pay for it. Just imagine what can happen with the stuff that is going to be highly paid in the future. Deep fakes, microfacial expressions, etc. are going to be just getting better and better and better as computational power and information gathered from the web becomes bigger, larger, more data sets driven. If you have 20,000 hours of video feed of Obama doing like random facial expressions and speaking words and stuff, you're going to get a really good rendition of his voice and of his posture, of his facial expressions, etc. And it'll be easy to fake a video from Obama. So there's going to be ramifications for public trust in systems, institutions, other people, leaders, that all are going to have a need for some sort of regulation. Whether that be at the point of entry, so the technology itself, or post-entry level, where the technology is sending out that information into the wider world. So these are things that are going to happen. And we're going to see the limits of what free speech has. Will these things be seen as inherently defamatory, inherently libelous? That is the question that courts and Congress are going to have to decide. And when they do, we'll be sure to report it on this program. But with that concludes this segment of the News Roundup. Now we have more information to cover, and we're going to talk now about the forever lying, perfectly good, the grift that keeps on giving, George Santos. So ABC News reported yesterday that a former fundraiser for George Santos was indicted on federal charges that he impersonated a high-ranking congressional aide while soliciting contributions for the New York Republican campaign. Sam Mealy was charged with 4 counts of wire fraud and aggravated identity theft in an alleged scheme to defend donors and obtain money for Santos under false pretenses. Prosecutors said Mealy used a fake name, email address. Prosecutors said that Mealy used a fake name and email address to impersonate, quote, high-ranking aide to a member of the House with leadership responsibilities. While the indictment did not name the person who was impersonated, the details of the charges match with multiple news reports identifying the aide as Dan Meyer. Meyer was the long-term chief of staff to House Speaker McCarthy. Santos was not charged in this indictment. In fact, the facts of the case rest on events that overlap with the congressman's own alleged crimes of wire fraud and money laundering, federal prosecutors said in a filing on Wednesday. Mealy pled not guilty to charges in Brooklyn's federal court and was released on a $150,000 bond. Jeez, that's a lot of money. Federal prosecutors said that Mealy sent fraudulent fundraising solicitations to more than a dozen prospective donors between August and December of 2021, at times signing the email with the aide's full name and title. In a letter sent to Santos last September, Mealy admitted to, quote, faking my identity to a big donor, according to the indictment. He went on to describe himself as a high-risk, high-reward in everything I do. A McCarthy spokesman confirmed that they were first made aware of the impersonation in August of 2021. The indictment came 3 months after Santos was arrested on charges of wire fraud, money laundering, theft of public funds, and making false statements to Congress. he has pled not guilty and insisted he has no plans to resign from Congress. And why should he? Honestly, why would you resign from Congress? No one can force you to. The speakership is on a very thin margin of support from the Republicans. One less Republican from a resignation means that they have a harder time enacting any laws. And there's no mechanism in place right now to hold members of Congress liable for things that they did outside of Congress. We've reported on this previously, so when you watch this video, please see the link above. So with all that said, it's just free money at this point. He can sit pretty in his little office chair in Congress on the House floor and get paid while this investigation goes into him. And there's no means for addressing this. Honestly, I mean, we don't necessarily want a criminal indictment to automatically unseat a sitting member of Congress. There are going to be crimes that are going to be like, oh my God, oh shit, that person definitely needs to go right now, right? But we do want to have due process. We do want to make sure that these aren't leveraged in order to go after political enemies. What we don't want to see is I'm fighting corruption, like we see in China, Saudi Arabia, Iran, Brazil, Costa Rica, Haiti, Thailand rather. All these places, Guatemala. You don't want to see these anti-corruption campaigns used as a thinly veiled attempt to just cement power and get rid of political enemies. We don't want to see that happen in the United States. So it's not necessarily a good thing to have these members, once charged, to be automatically unseated. Now, once convicted, once found guilty, yes, there should be a redress for that. If that happens, then it should probably be automatic. Okay, you're guilty of a crime. You shouldn't be sitting in Congress right now. Like, you're supposed to be in jail. You shouldn't have your ability to vote, right? So you should be automatically kicked out. If that's not already the case, I'm actually not sure if that's already the case or not. But if it's not, it should be. So that's where we at with Santos, right? Chances are he will be challenged in the primary. Let me look really quick. I don't think there is a challenger yet. Santos challenger. Oh yeah, there is one. It's 2 days ago, actually. 2 days ago. This is something that I was not aware of, so let's go. The Spectrum One News. This was published on the 15th, so let's pull it up. We got it pulled up. Gonna even do this real quick. Embattled Representative George Santos in New York will have one more Republican challenger trying to block his bid for re-election. With a sizable primary field already lined up to run in the Queens and Nassau County District, lawyer Greg Hatch became the latest to throw his hat in the ring. Blah, 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 blah. Indicted, yada, 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 yada. Hatch, whatever. So that's the newest one. So there's a large field already geared up to challenge him. So that's good. I wasn't aware of this. I haven't been paying too much attention because the Nassau County Republican Party actually isn't interested in backing him. They found out all this information post basically election. From the looks of it, there wasn't any due diligence about the candidate, or maybe they just didn't expect him to win, so they didn't really care. One of the two things happened, right? But they're not backing him, right? The Nassau County Republican Party is not backing him. They've invited challengers. They're not going to give him money. And there's been no comment from Speaker McCarthy about whether or not he's going to give him money or not. But chances are that's not happening. As far as I know. Again, I didn't know that there was that many challengers already to Santos. So it's very possible that McCarthy's come out and say, we're not going to give him any money, even though that's kind of against where Republicans' strategy has been, right? Protecting incumbents from challengers. But McCarthy has already disavowed and said that he should resign, yada, yada, yada. With that. But yeah, that's where we're at with Joe Santos. So when there's more information, you be sure to check it out on the News Roundup every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. With that, that concludes this segment of the News Roundup. Doing good on time. 19 minutes. All right, let's now move on to the Senate, and starting in the Senate with appropriations bills. So as reported by the New York Times this week, appropriation bills cleared the Senate Appropriations Committee last month on a bipartisan basis in one of the smoothest processes in recent years. Quote, "We urge our House colleagues to emulate the Senate," Democratic Majority Leader Chuck Schumer of New York said on Tuesday. "The only way we're going to avoid a government shutdown is bipartisan support in both houses." It was reported earlier this month that Schumer and Speaker McCarthy had spoken and agreed that a continuing resolution would likely be required to fund the government until December. This would allow for some breathing room as the Republican House majority continues to fight internally over several cultural war amendments. As we've reported on this program in the past couple of weeks, there's issues surrounding whether or not military should pay for your troops to go to another state for abortion care. Military is pro that right now, not because the military is pro-abortion, but because abortion actually covers a wide variety of procedures that are necessary. And in some states, that could be illegal. Texas being one of them, Georgia being another one. I think Louisiana, I think being one. There's been instances, Ohio being one, but Ohio doesn't really have a big military base. Tennessee being one, so there's military bases there. The reason being is that it's with imminent danger to the life of the mother. It's imminent, and it's not like just generalized danger of the mother. The laws are worded poorly, or there's enough risk involved legally for a hospital to want to wait until it's like, okay, now we have to provide this care to people. Now we have to give this care to this woman. Now we have to actually go through the abortion procedure to save this woman's life. And so the military is like, no, we don't want that to happen. So they've been agreed to do that. And some of these appropriation bills that's fighting in the House is against those. They're trying to like make it to where the military can't pay for that, regardless of whether or not the life of the mother is at risk or not. They don't want it to be paid for. I'm sure they're going to figure out some way to like thread this needle a bit. It's one of those things where it will bite Republicans in the ass. So maybe the people that are pushing the hardest for these things will have some sense beaten to them. But right now that's not happening. Again, because since the Republican majority in the House is so narrow, we're at this impasse here. And there's other issues too, trans medical care, the ESG stuff, a bunch of different things that Congress, the Republican staunch Freedom Caucus Republicans are against. And so they're trying to flex their muscles. They're trying to get McCarthy to bend the knee to them instead of the other way around. And since he already slovenly accepted the speakership, they had the leverage. He does not, despite the fact that he has more support from moderates than he does from the House Freedom Caucus. Strange times we do live in, everybody. Strange times indeed. That concludes that segment of the News Roundup. Speaking of cultural war issues, and one of the things we were just talking about, we still have military confirmations on hold due to Tuberville. As we've reported on this program before, the U.S. So we still have military confirmations held up by Tuberville. So the U.S. Navy on Monday became the third branch of the military to no longer have a Senate-confirmed leader for the first time in history, as a Republican senator continues to block military nominations. Retiring Chief of Naval Operations Admiral Mike Gilday gave up command on Monday. The Navy, Army, and Marine Corps are now all without a confirmed leader. This is unprecedented. It is unnecessary, and it is unsafe, U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin has said. Republican Senator Tommy Tuberville, who represents Alabama, has blocked hundreds of military nominations from moving forward. As we reported on the program before, he claims that the Pentagon is improperly using government funding to cover travel cost for abortions for service members and their dependents. He has allies, as we just said, in the House in this. So he is standing strong. And because we have a filibuster and a 50-50 Senate, he's able to leverage this to no end. There's no way to force him to stop. Quote, "This sweeping hold is undermining America's readiness. It's hindering our ability to retain our best officers, and it's upending the lives of far too many American military families," Lloyd Austin had said. The Senate's approval of military promotions is usually smooth. However, Tuberville's hold cannot prevent the Democratic majority Senate from voting on any promotion, but it can drastically slow down the process. Again, it's 50-50, but there is rules that have been agreed to that can be changed, but can only be changed with new sessions. And since we're in a current session, there's not an election coming up, it can't be changed yet. So all this stuff is being pushed back to no end. And so they're able to, it's being brought to a grinding halt. Now, even though they're, sorry, hold on a second. Sorry about that. So even though there aren't official Senate designated commanders, Biden has put in the people into command as acting leaders for the time being that he would probably, that was going to nominate anyways. Hopefully this all goes away very soon and they just become the director official. Now, what is that actually does though? So what? Acting. I'm gonna look this up really quick because I actually didn't look this. I'll look this up later to make sure that there isn't, I'm not being wrong, but I don't think right now that an acting member, an acting director, an acting admiral or leader of the military, of the Navy, chief of the Navy, etc. I don't think an acting person has less authority than a fully Senate confirmed one, but I do think that there's maybe a time limit and they have to be re-upped, stuff like that. So it's dangerous, but from what I understand as of right now, and I'll probably just cut this from the clip, honestly, because I don't want to be like wrong and have it be permanently wrong. So I'll go through and actually research this and come back with the proper information. But I don't think it actually has any direct impact on their ability to carry out orders or to actually issue commands. So I don't think there is that going on, but it is not good. It is not good at all. But with that, my friends, that concludes this segment of the News Roundup. Now, if you're just joining us, welcome everybody. This is the Crowdsourced Politics News Roundup, and we do this every Thursday, unless stated otherwise, to cover the news that was, with the kind of analysis only the crowd can provide. We cover this around 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to roughly 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, give or take about 20 minutes or so, depending on how much news there is to cover, and how much pontificating I do while we cover it. We join, if you're just turning in, we do this, like I said, every Thursday, but we also, we splice in actual just raw fact-based reporting like we just did up above, but also within my own personal opinion matter throughout. So we do synthesize the news and some punditry as well, like most people do on the internet, but we try to cover and be fair to all sides when we can. When we can. This is not a both sidesism program. So if somebody does something fucked up, we're going to call them out on it. And we'll get to that later in the program, of course. We do other stuff in addition to this program. We do a general speaking. We have a Cipher State, which is foreign affairs and foreign policy focused podcast. where we cover an issue facing geopolitics globally. Anything from like the war in Libya to the Libyan civil war to what the French elections, UK elections, what happened with Truss, everything like that and stuff in between, China, etc. And so we do that. We're gonna do that again. We're gonna hopefully do it monthly. I just got to get back on it. Need to get back on the schedule and just get some goddamn discipline and do it better. So yes, that will be posted. And those are, generally speaking, we do those lives, but we also try to edit them in and do highly produced content. In fact, let me go ahead and show you what I mean by that here, because I think this is important to understand. This is the kind of quality that we're trying to do. So let's do this. I'm gonna go to it real quick. Okay. So I just want to show you. Oh, why did it reload? I just want to show you what I'm talking about here, because this is important, and this is the kind of stuff that I aim to do on a regular basis. Assuming it loads. Do I have internet? Yeah, internet. There it goes. All right. Just give you a bit of an idea here. It's not wanting to play my YouTube video. And our good friend Tiberius D tackle issues was part of our good friend during news. Let's go ahead and start getting into it. Boris Johnson, who became UK Prime Minister in 2019, was generally popular, but by June of this year, several scandals caught up to him. The icing on the cake was Partygate, a report that showed government officials had attended multiple social gatherings in a breach of COVID-19 regulations. By June of this year, more than 50 of Johnson's ministers quit, and most of his conservative lawmakers said he must go. And so, in early July, he announced he would resign.
It is clearly now the will of the Parliamentary Conservative Party that there should be a new leader of that party and therefore a new Prime Minister.
So I just wanted to give you a brief little look at that. That's the kind of quality that we're trying to produce with that show. And yeah, that opening, that took a bit to create, but it was worth it. I think it was worth it because it's super high quality. Like, that's the kind of stuff that you would see. I mean, honestly, you would see that like from freaking NPR or, you know, Reveal or something, some other highly produced, you know, podcast with multiple people working on it and researchers and stuff like that. And I put it together myself, so kudos to me. I don't mean to toot my own horn too much on that, but yeah, that's what we're trying to do. So we want to get back to that because I think it's important. I think that since Dylan Burns is well, he's back now, but after he left, there was definitely a lack of that within the Twitch political space, and so I wanted to fill it, and so we tried to, and I just couldn't keep up with it. But I'm going to try to do it again because I like doing it. I like those programs. So if you like those programs, definitely check it out wherever you get your podcast at, or on our YouTube channel, as you just saw. We also are doing more video essays. Again, the AI episode will be done when it's done, honestly, at this point. But when it's done, we'll announce it and you can check that out. But it'll also be of high quality content where you would typically see other video essayists also doing their stuff. So we're hoping to do that on a regular basis. With that said, we are looking for editors because anytime I'm like slightly busy with work and I have to like stay later, or there's like a small family emergency I have to take care of, which might be happening a little bit more often due to some issues at home, not my personal home back in Indiana. I don't have the time to edit as much as I did. So we're looking for an editor. So if you know an editor, if you are an editor, if you can do political talking head content editing with a smudge of creative balance into it to make the stuff more engaging with good edits, jump cuts, and that sort of stuff, please reach out. I'm willing to pay you. I'm willing to pay you $30 plus an hour. We'll definitely discuss what that looks like and how many hours a week that is and stuff like that. But yeah, definitely willing to pay out a decent chunk of money for editing. Decent, you know, I can't afford $120 an hour, but decent. So Nothing to sneeze at is what I'm saying. Nothing to sneeze at. So yeah. But yeah, we got to get back into the news. So let's go ahead and start back into the news and get over to SCOTUS. So for this week's SCOTUS update, we'll be turning to SCOTUS blog on TikTok for this update on the fight over so-called ghost guns. If you don't know what a ghost gun is, it is a gun that does not have a serial number associated with it. It was probably produced at home, and generally speaking, not necessarily 3D printed, but that's becoming more and more common. It's becoming more and more common. But let's go ahead and jump over to SCOTUS blog for that now. Oh, good. It lets me maximize it again.
The Supreme Court gave themselves until 5 p.m. today, Tuesday, August 8th, extending. In a split 5-4 vote, the Supreme Court allowed the Biden administration.
Oh, that's why I was supposed to. Hold on. We're going to start that over.
In a split 5-4 vote, the Supreme Court allowed the Biden administration's rule regulating so-called ghost guns to be temporarily reinstated. Chief Justice John Roberts and Justice Amy Coney Barrett joined the court's 3 liberal justices to stay, aka pause, a Texas judge's order barring enforcement of the rule. U.S. Solicitor General Elizabeth Prelogar had argued to the justices that Judge Reed O'Connor's order was irreparably harming the public and the government by reopening the floodgates to the tide of untraceable ghost guns flowing into our nation's communities. The rule was put forward by the ATF, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, and it clarified that federal laws that apply to firearms, like requiring certain background checks and some record-keeping rules, apply to ghost guns as well. Manufacturers and sellers of ghost guns are continuing to challenge the rule. They argue that even using the phrase ghost gun is a propaganda term that appears nowhere in federal law. After the
I mean, they're not wrong necessarily on that, but honestly, who gives a shit? Everybody knows what you're talking about. It's a gun that wasn't manufactured, that doesn't have a serial number, that doesn't have all the other regulations that are associated with gun manufacturing because they're made in somebody's backyard, okay? Or somebody's blacksmith, gunsmithing, mom pop. Well, it could be more than a mom pop operation, but you get what I'm saying. Somebody's small operation for creating of guns that can't be traced from a sale perspective because it doesn't have an associated serial number. And so, honestly, or 3D printed. Thank you, Nikki. Or 3D printed for sure. But these things, the 3D printed guns are not very good. At least not really. The 3D printed gun parts assembly stuff that a lot of people you see doing things with that look really cool and very dangerous use non-3D printed parts. So they usually the barrel's usually not 3D printed. Neither is the trigger mechanism. Sometimes is not 3D printed, or the gas fed semi-automatic parts of that are not necessarily 3D printed either. But everything else around that would be. That said, though, again, these things, if you're going to require a background check to own a firearm when you buy it from any licensed dealer, then you should require a background check to buy these guns as well. In fact, you should be required to have a background check to really even own a gun, to be honest with you. If you are, to me, if you're going to inherit a gun, and that shouldn't just make you immune to being like, okay, let me go through a background check, right? Like if you're going to be gifted a gun from a family member, that shouldn't be an easy way to get around a background check. Granted, if it turns out that you know that your brother or your brother-in-law isn't allowed to legally own a gun and you gift it to him or them, her, whatever the case may be, you're breaking the law, but you have to know that they're not. And how do you know? Well, they never tell you and you never ask. You don't know. You don't know. So that's the issues with our background check system. It's why we don't have universal background checks, regardless of what gun enthusiasts want to tell you. Regardless of what the NRA and the Gun Owners of America want to tell you about background checks. No, we don't have universal background checks. Private sales do not require them. Ergo, legally speaking, we do not have universal background checks. Well, let's go ahead and let our friends at SCOTUS blog finish this up. It's only got about 20 seconds left.
For the court's decision today, the rule will be enforceable while the litigation plays out in the lower courts. Justices Thomas, Alito, Gorsuch, and Kavanaugh disagreed, would have kept the rule on pause, but as with many emergency/shadow docket decisions, we don't have an explanation of their reasoning.
And we probably shouldn't, to be honest with you. All right. Let's move on now to another case, and that case is from July 24th, and it informs the current discussion in the U.S. on whether or not the court has unlimited power without oversight from Congress. Let's go ahead and get into it.
Israel limited its Supreme Court's authority.
Hold on a second, that didn't sound right to me.
Today, Israel limited its Supreme Court's authority, specifically its power to block government decisions. And the White House was adamantly against it. So does that make you wonder, where does our Supreme Court get its power, and can it be restricted? First of all, this debate over the power of the Supreme Court is nothing new. Seriously, since there has been a Supreme Court, and even before that, when it was just an idea in our founders' heads, we've been fighting over the precise power that it should have.
Yeah, we should note, and it's probably going to be mentioned, but we should note that Marbury versus Madison was the court exerting its authority during the time that the founders were in office and had power and could be taken to court. And in that, the court basically seized unenumerated power with the ability to check the constitutionality of a law and throw said laws out. And the founders kind of just like, makes sense to me. So maybe, just saying, courts have always been a little bit about lawmaking. Just saying.
Of course, the Supreme Court gets its power from the Constitution, but there's not a ton there. Article 3 establishes a Supreme Court, but not what types of cases it should hear, or how many justices should sit on the court, or what the lower federal courts look like. But the court also gets its power from laws that are passed by Congress, judiciary acts, starting with the Judiciary Act of 1789, which gave us a 6-justice Supreme Court and the court's jurisdiction to hear original jurisdiction cases and appeals.
In my opinion, the reason that the founding fathers didn't actually limit directly one way or the other how many members of the court there should be is because they understood that as the country got bigger, then there might need to be more Supreme Court justices. And it should be noted that at the time of the founding fathers, when this was all just set up, Supreme Court justices often traveled and handled lower court cases themselves. Ergo, if you want to have an expansive Supreme Court because of issues of having not enough judges on lower courts, you can actually send them around to make them hear other cases. So that was what things that happened.
Made the court supreme over all federal and state courts. And we got more judiciary acts later, including some judiciary acts repealing previous judiciary acts. But suffice it to say, some of the power comes from these laws that were passed.
And another reason, look, Marbury versus Madison, there you go. So I preempted SCOTUS blog here a bit. I didn't have a chance to watch this beforehand. But it should be also noted that, you know what? I lost my train of thought. So never mind. Let's go ahead and continue.
And then there's a little case called Marbury v. Madison, where the Supreme Court straight up
God damn. Why are you so loud?
Took some of the power for itself. In that case, the Supreme Court said it didn't have the authority to tell then Secretary of State James Madison to issue a commission to William Marbury to become a justice of the peace. This is even though Marbury had a right to the commission and the remedy he was seeking was proper. And that's because the statute that Marbury was relying on was the problem, the court said. The statute exceeded Congress's authority under the Constitution. Sound familiar? So the Supreme Court says, hey, we can't give Marbury what he wanted, while also saying, hey, we have the power to invalidate laws as unconstitutional. Big deal, and not explicitly in the Constitution.
What I wanted to say was, I just remembered, what I wanted to say is that this also goes to the idea that there is co-equal branches of government, but Congress is supreme. So Congress determines the laws, the pay of the other branches, how the courts are administered, etc. The idea was to put more balancing powers, right? Still balancing powers, but putting a little bit of a tilt onto Congress itself. And this is where you get some of the ideas for some of the stuff that we might be talking about later with this, the legislative supremacy clause, etc., when it comes to voting rights and whether or not the courts can overturn those rights based on their own courts constitutions and prior laws passed by their own legislatures. So there is some valid legal theory to some of that stuff, but it goes it basically just flies in the face of everything that has happened in the United States since the founding of the country, since before the Constitution was officially drafted. Like, the courts are common law courts. Common law courts are designed to be somewhat of administrative bodies that actually pass judgment using reason and laws to make judicial decisions that actually create law based on judgment. That's just how common law works. This isn't a civic law code. This isn't a code. This isn't the Napoleonic Code where, no, the courts have to rule X, Y, and Z based on the Constitution. No, they have leeway in a common law setting in order to basically have judgment and make sure that things are fair and just. That's the kind of system we have. Whether you think that's better or not isn't really necessarily relevant to how that's always the way it's always been. So, just a little more things. But let's go ahead and let her finish. There's only about 20 seconds left.
Here is the most famous passage, maybe in all of American law. You can pause and read it. If you want to read more about all of this, you can read the report from Biden's Bipartisan Commission on Court Reform. Now, can the court's authority be limited today? Well,
yes.
That'll have to be part 2. But it's not a no.
All right. And then finally, we're going to close out this segment with a look forward to the new term as well, also from SCOTUS. All right, let's go ahead and start that.
It's the middle of August, which means, believe it or not, we're less than 50 days away from a brand new Supreme Court term. And we've got some major cases coming up. The court will begin its new term on the first Monday in October, as it always does. And we already know the cases that are slated for October, including some biggies. And here they are. This one is about
That one is Alexander versus SC Conference of the NAACP.
Purported racial gerrymander in South Carolina. The justices will hear a challenge to the state's congressional redistricting map that was drawn by the Republican state legislature after the 2020 census. A 3-judge panel ruled that South Carolina's 1st congressional district, now represented by Republican Nancy Mace, was an unconstitutional gerrymander because state legislators, they say, deliberately moved tens of thousands of black voters to another district in order to keep the seat safe for Republicans. The 3-judge panel ruled that they needed to redraw the map.
Now, if passed as prologue, it is possible that Roberts actually rules in favor of the plaintiff, which is the NAACP, and makes that district null and void. While Roberts has said that pre-clearance and has been gunning for the Voting Rights Act ever since he got into the judiciary, pretty much, he seems to think that maybe there's a line to it. Like, you can do political gerrymandering, just don't make it obviously racist, kind of thing, right? Oh, you can create one black. You can't create only one black district if 40% of your population is black. You have to at least have 2. Like you can't go from 3 to 1 when there's that much of a difference, right? He's essentially like, oh, God, like, they're not wrong, but this looks really bad. So that's my interpretation of where Roberts is going. Roberts very, very, very much cares about the legitimacy of the court. He cares about the legitimacy of his, what's the word? Legacy. He very much cares about his legacy. And so some of the cases that might be coming out of this may not make sense in a purely ideological lens, but if you understand that legacy, the image of the court is very much on top of some of the justices' minds, especially as they're tampering around with edges of things. They just overturned Roe v. Wade. Some of it might make sense a little bit more. Okay. It's not going to be a clear one-to-one. Every conservative all every time is going to vote for whatever Trump or the basis of the based of the Republican Party wants. But there's also going to be some head scratchers, and one of them is Roberts' current rulings when it comes to racial gerrymandering. But let's continue.
And this one is about the Constitution.
So that one that she just pointed to reads Consumer Financial Protection Bureau versus Community Financial Services Assistance, ASSN. So the CFPB has been a thorn in conservative side since it was created during the Obama years, and really Elizabeth Warren basically created the thing herself. When I say that, I mean that she came up with the idea, the general scaffolding, et cetera, et cetera. There was a lot of people that went into it, but it was birthed from her ideas, going back to 2002, I want to say. Don't quote me on the year, but it was significantly before Obama came to office. So, yeah, let's go ahead and let that one go.
Constitutionality of the funding mechanism for the CFPB. And I know that sounds boring, but it's not. In fact, the CFPB is flashing the red siren here, saying that the Fifth Circuit's ruling calls into question virtually every action the CFPB has taken in the 12 years since it was created. So, mark your calendars.
That's huge. The reason being is that if the court rules that it had been unconstitutionally funded, it means that every regulation that it has gotten through, every regulation that's passed, every oversight, every term it's gotten to put in anything, any of the regulations, any of the oversight, all that stuff becomes null and void. So that's huge. And say what you want about capitalism and like liberalism and all that stuff if you're on the far left of the spectrum, and if you're on the far right of the spectrum, oh, it's telling businesses what to do, blah blah blah. The CFPB has one of these things that actually helps regular people out on a consistent basis, at least when Democrats are in charge. CFPB is why veterans can't get scammed with high interest loans, variable rate loans, by signing away things they don't understand. The CFPB is why we have certain regulations around credit cards that actually have helped people from getting out from under huge, massive debts from overly complicated and illegal contracts. So that one's really big. It is really big. But that's all we're going to say about that, because that concludes this segment of the News Roundup. Now, speaking of consumer protection and all the things that go in that, we're going to now transition over to the U.S. economy. Got a lot of news to cover from the U.S. economy. It's one of the things that we like to cover on this program on a consistent basis, because, again, we feel that this in the Twitch space, that there isn't much coverage there when it comes to raw economic data and analysis. So let's start off now with talking about deflation, not just disinflation, but deflation. Is it in the cards? Let's find out. So according to Market Insider, disinflation could soon turn to deflation in the US, partly due to the risk of crashing stock and real estate prices, according to Wormworth Asset Management. Already, commercial property values are under pressure, while a potentially overvalued stock market could face a swift correction if conditions sour. A plunge in the price of these assets would go a long way to sparking deflation, the firm argues. Quote, to speculate about deflation again at this point looks premature at first glance, but not at a second look. For several reasons, the risk of falling consumer price levels has increased, said economist Dieter Wormworth said in a note, pointing to various pressures that could weigh down inflation in the economy. Excuse me. That's contrary to what other economists... Let me start that over. That's contrary to what other economists have been saying, with many worrying that inflation is a lingering problem and will stay sticky. Prices accelerated 3.3% year over year in July, slightly higher than the 3% growth since June. But deflation could soon be in the cards when examining the huge downside risk that lies ahead for stocks and real estate assets, Wormuth had warned. So, read that again. We're just talking about real estate prices and stock values. And the reason for those two things is primarily due to work from home. Because the real estate prices they're talking about are not homes. They're not apartments. Those prices are continuing to go up, albeit slower than they were in the past. And there's less housing coming onto the market. We're in this weird like bubble here where there's going to be more housing coming on the market in a couple of maybe 6 months, 7 months or so. But right now there's less than there was due to the pandemic, due to COVID, yada, yada, yada. So there's a lull in the amount of homes coming on the market. And because of high interest rates, every seller for a home is also a buyer for the most part. There's not that much investment property. Investment property can be a lot of the market in specific areas, but generally overall, no. It's so for example, during the pandemic in certain parts of Atlanta, Georgia, there was investment firms buying up 20% or more of properties in the area. If those firms do not be able to make a profit, those homes could be sold onto the market at a loss and cause prices in that area to diminish greatly, right? Good thing for buyers, bad thing for sellers, right? But generally speaking, across the entire nation, investment firms only own between 1% and 2% of all properties, including single family homes, I should say. Investment firms own more of the apartments and stuff. This includes LLCs, partnerships, etc. Anybody that doesn't own it as a primary residence. So if it's a business that owns the property, a trust, an LLC, a corporation, etc., those are considered to be investment properties, right? So if you're like a landlord and you do your business or a small realtor company, do your business under an LLC, even though you might be flipping only 3 houses a year, those houses are considered investment. According to Redfin. This is all going back to Redfin from years ago. Okay. Not going to pull it up on screen, but we know on this program what it is. So that's what we got it. But yeah, continuing on though. So because it's only 2% or so, that's not really what it is. What they were talking about for real estate here is mostly businesses. Because of work from home being such a huge part of our lives now, thanks in part to the pandemic, thanks in part to Zoom, thanks in part to people just reassessing whether or not they want to spend, these are companies, mind you, wanting to spend, millions of dollars a year on leases for businesses. There are depressed markets all over the place. New York, San Francisco, Austin, etc. Pretty much any super city has vacant buildings, vacant businesses that are going to have to be repurposed at some point. Well, right now, they're being kept on the books for the investment firms, but soon, possibly, according to this analysis, they'll be sold. And if they're sold, then that's going to depress their value, and that depressed value can be seen in the inflation numbers. So while your home might not go up in value, while your rent might not go down, overall speaking, these will help drive down prices. With one caveat, if some of these become apartments rather than being repurposed for other businesses or other things like that, then that could also help maybe modestly drive down prices in those areas. So that's the one caveat. There has been talk in places like Detroit, in Chicago, New York, of these buildings being converted into apartments, being rezoned to allow that. But that conversion also takes hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars, depending on the size of the property, because offices aren't set up for piping, electricity, air conditioning, etc. for rental units. They're set up for offices with a single main pipe going up to the wall, no pipes coming around to give people a place in their own cubicle to do their business or have a shower. So it takes money. So these are usually converted to like luxury apartments with like different facades and stuff like that, because they have to literally like, oh, this is cool. Let me see if I can find this. This is actually really cool. Building drilled into ceiling apartment repurpose. This is like super cool if we can see that. Now building cut into quad giant drill. Yeah, I didn't think about to look this up beforehand, but there's like, I can't find it quickly. There's really this cool thing where they literally have a freaking like giant drill that they can put onto a building, like onto the roof of a building, and basically carve out the center of it to make these modifications. It's really cool. It's really cool. But yeah, that's something that can be done. So that's why this is happening. But let's continue on though. Now, deflation could soon be in the cards when examining the huge downside risk that lies ahead for stocks and real estate assets, Wormuth warned. Continuing on, the S&P 500 has rallied 16% from the start of the year, leaving stocks dangerously overpriced, Wormuth said, especially considering that the weakening outlook for corporate earnings. So we dropped 24%, had a rebound of 16%. There's still that 5% or so gap in there, but that gap isn't enough to basically overcome what earning calls are expected to be. But these companies are still profitable. Just saying. Continuing on though. Businesses could struggle to maintain profits as financial conditions remain tight and inflation continues to cool off. That could result in one of the worst earnings recessions since 2008. Morgan Stanley has warned, an event that bank predicted could cause stocks to fall as much as another 16%, basically returning to the floor of COVID. Trouble is also brewing in commercial real estate, as we just mentioned. Again, it wasn't housing and apartments. There's around $1.5 trillion in debt in the sector that will soon hit maturity and will need to be refinanced. But interest rates are now higher and banks are pulling on lending. That could produce a boatload of distressed commercial properties, leading prices to crash as much as 40%, per an estimate from Capital Economics. Falling inflation will also be stoked by slowing GDP growth across major global economies, including the US. The Fed has raised interest rates and aggressively reduced its balance sheets over the past year to fight inflation. Markets are expecting the Fed to leave interest rates unchanged at its September policy meeting as central bankers respond to progress on inflation. And I'm hoping that they're correct. Investors are pricing in an 89% chance the central bank will keep rates levels in September, with odds rising that the Fed's cut rates in the first quarter of 2024. As I've said on this program numerous times, the Fed could easily tighten rates into stagflation. Stagflation is above average inflation with a collapsing economy. So with a recession, right? Deep recession, job losses, etc. And the reason that it could do that is that when the Fed rapidly does anything, rapidly cuts rates, rapidly increases rates, whatever it is, there's so much of a lag between what they did and the end results of what they did that it could go too far. And I've been saying since the Fed got to around 5% or so on rates, 4.5 to like 5%, that they were approaching too much. We are right now Fed benchmark. I think we're at 5.2, 5.5. Yeah. So we're at 5.5, like I was thinking. We're at a Fed bench rate at 5.5%. I've been saying on the program that I expected the Fed to pause permanently between 5.25 and 5.5%, or 5% and 5.5%, somewhere in that range, to pause for the rest of the year and into next year. That's what I was expecting. I did say that there was a possibility that the Fed would continue to raise rates up to 6 to 6.25%. The reason I said that possibility is there is because I didn't know how rapidly inflation would be able to decrease below 4%. And if any jitters in the inflation rate would cause the Fed to want to tighten more. We just had a 3.3% versus a 3% rise in inflation. Part of that is due to China opening up. Part of that's due to gas prices going up due to China opening up. Part of that is due to the fact that last year prices were so much lower than they are right now, or higher rather, not lower. I'm sorry. Rewind that. So part of that is due to the fact that prices raised a bit more last year, a slower pace. They did a slower pace in July of last year than they did in June. So that 3.3 could be noise. Could be noise. It's not very much, so it's probably noise. But these are still problems, okay? And these problems still exist. And with the Fed doing whatever it's doing, Fed doing whatever it's doing, we could easily see them tighten up into a bad issue. So I'm hoping that they're right, on the. I'm hoping they're right that the Fed keeps rates paused at this rate. I don't want to see them go to 6 to 6.25%. I want them to stay below 6%. If they go to 5.75%, which I don't think is necessary, mind you, I really don't think this is necessary, then if they stay below that, though, it starves off the possibility of tightening too much to the point of causing more breakage. The breakage that we saw, they already started breakage. We saw that with the bank collapses that happened earlier this year. There wasn't many bank collapses, mind you. There wasn't many bank collapses because of other banks coming in and shoring up the smaller banks. But the reason that those banks collapsed mostly was due to historically low rates suddenly jumping up through the roof. And mismanagement. There was mismanagement there. They didn't hedge enough of interest rate. They didn't do enough hedging for interest rates, suddenly increasing. That would have given them the ability to dump off some of those bonds and make some money off of the increase in interest rates. So there is mismanagement there, a good amount of it. But had the Feds not raised rates so rapidly, if that wasn't necessary, they did everything they should have done. They put their assets into really safe assets. That money was still there. It just wasn't, they couldn't convert it to cash like it would have been able to do had rates not been increased so much. Why buy a Fed note, a 30-year Fed note at 2% when you can buy one at 4%? That's essentially what happened. Nobody's going to do that, so they're going to expect a discount on it. And so they couldn't convert to cash as quickly. That's all that happened. With mismanagement, of course, like I said. So with real estate properties being in distress as they are, and with some of these banks having the same similar issues with that real estate being part of their books, it won't necessarily cause a complete bank collapse. I don't think it's going to be a contagion that we had in like 2008, but it could cause more problems. The big banks aren't going to suffer too much. There's going to be some quarterly profit losses. If the Feds increase rates too much, there's going to be losses there. But we're not going to see another 2008 repeat. But we could see a recession because of the Feds raising too much and not giving enough wiggle room to maneuver around these now bad investments. And give me a second. So yeah, that's what we're having. Now, speaking of all that though, what does the Fed think? So CNN reports that the Federal Reserve officials were wary that inflation would slow further unless the US economy and labor markets also cool down, according to minutes from their July policy meeting released just this Wednesday. That means a rate hike in September remains in the cards, given the robust economic activity of the summer. It's also clear that the decision won't come without a heated debate, since a couple officials favored not hiking last month, according to the minutes. The minutes showed officials, quote, noted the recent reduction in total and core inflation rates, but they, quote, stressed that inflation remained unacceptably high and that further evidence would be required for them to be confident that inflation was clearly on a path towards the committee's 2% objective. Federal officials have a tradition of reaching unanimous decisions, but the Fed's inflation fight has reached a pivotal point in which the decisions aren't as obvious. This means some officials could dissent at next month's policy meeting. There have been 2 meetings in which Fed officials dissented with a decision since the central bank began lifting rates in March of 2022. For a rate pause to remain likely, core inflation must continue to decrease. That might be difficult if the labor market doesn't continue to cool or if the economy picks up steam again. By the labor market cooling, that inherently means less jobs being created and possibly more people out of work. The Federal Reserve's goal, from a lot of people's perspectives, is to get more retired people back into the labor force in order to drive down labor cost. So there's ways to do that, right? If you raise rates too much, that makes some debt not as attractive, not as able to be converted into cash. And so if that cash if it can be converted into cash, then what do you do to make up the difference? You go back to work. Even if it's only for 20 hours a week or 10 hours a week, whatever the case may be, you're still in the labor force. You're still creating competition in the labor force. You're filling jobs that need to be filled. Ergo, you're helping fight and cool down the labor market. The changes in immigration policy could also do that. There's different ways that the labor market could cool. It could be that we just suddenly see people just stop hiring, stop creating jobs. That would also cause the labor market to rapidly cool, which would push us into a possible recession. And we could see all the tech startup companies that were just living high off the hog with low interest rates and the like suddenly not be able to get capital. And then those companies just lay off massive amounts of people and cause a sector recession that will drive down cost as well because of less demand in the market. So there's different ways that this can be happening. Fed seems to be really thinking that we need to cool off the labor market, which is bad for everybody else. It's good for investors. It's bad for you and me. So there we are. Continuing on, though, research from the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco argues that shelter inflation is poised to fall significantly, reaching 0% in 2024, then turning negative by the second half of the year. In other words, they're expecting inflation for home prices and rentals to stop going up. They're expecting it to hit 0 and then rapidly decrease as more housing comes on the market. Like I said, we are in this weird lull period in housing production simply because the pandemic threw off so much of the supply chain that it was hard to get materials. Now that the materials are back into circulation, those prices are coming down a bit. More housings are being built because there is still investment opportunity there. Not as much as there would be if inflation wasn't as high, if interest rates weren't as high, but it's still there. And the stuff that was being built during the pandemic that had to be paused is now going to be coming on the market again in the next 6 months to a year, basically from now. More housing supply will come on the market. That doesn't mean that it's going to happen. It doesn't mean it's going to suddenly impact, like, overnight the amount of rent you're going to pay. Don't expect your rent prices to come down, especially if you're locked into a 15-month lease because you're already agreed to it, right? So I don't expect it to actually have that much of an impact, but it could. It could. Now, for this part, though, and it should be noted here, shelter cost made up 90% of inflation in July. So all the inflation, the vast majority of it, all but 10% of inflation that happened in July was due to housing, due to shelter, particularly single family homes. So, and rent specifically, single family homes and rent, but single family homes. Now, economists have argued that the full effects of the Fed's most aggressive rate hiking campaign in decades haven't trickled through to the broader real economy just yet. A point also reflected in the minutes from the Fed's July meeting. Fed economists are in fact no longer projecting a recession, according to the minutes, which Federal Chairman Jerome Powell divulged in his post-meeting news conference last month. In other words, we've officially, or at least feeling like it is, officially avoided a crash landing, but that crash landing could just be delayed. Remember, it takes a massive amount of time for all the Fed's machinations to trickle their way through the economy and get to you and I. It takes a long time for that to happen. It's been estimated it could take as much as 14 months of lag time, so a year and 2 months of lead time from when you aggressively raise or lower interest rates from hitting the market. Lowering the interest rates tends to have more an immediate impact on the market because more money suddenly is flowing in. But raising them back up, people have nest eggs they can sit on. Their ability to get pay increases to that, etc., kind of balances out a little bit, so it creates more lead time to get it. So there's still a possibility, not above a 0%, non-zero chance. There's still a great possibility. I would say probably coin flip, honestly, that we could still see a recession during Biden's administration, at least his first administration. So there's still a possibility for a recession next year. I don't think that we're going to actually have it happen, but not because of what the Fed did. If we're not going to have it happen, it will be because of the money coming from the federal government that is just now going out from the Inflation Reduction Act and the infrastructure bill that is hitting the market now and well into next year. So it is hitting the market now. The appropriations were made. They came into the 2023 budget cycle, which was started in October. Those had to go through a clearing process for state governments and other projects to win contracts for that money. That takes 6-7 months. So that money for those first contracts, those first bidding wars, etc., for those projects are just now getting into the hands of states and other groups to get that money. And that's going to continue on for the next 2 or 3 years. I say 2 or 3 years because it's possible that Republicans take back over Congress, nix that freaking budget, and just make it go shrivel it up like that, similar to what they did to the ACA, in which case that would be just slamming on the brakes on that, which could also contribute to a recession. Given the fact that they passed they haven't passed a government budget yet, but they passed a debt ceiling beyond the 2024 election. If they can get that through, if they can get a similar deal through for funding the government and without taking away much of the money that's been directed at these programs, then we'll be able to have a sigh of relief, because that means that money is still going to go out and it will counterbalance some of the Fed's interest rate hikes. And so when that happens, we'll let you know. But we have to continue on with the newscast. And that concludes this segment of it. So let's now quickly talk about labor. So Reuters reported that the number of Americans filing new claims for unemployment benefits fell last week, pointing to continued tightness in labor markets, even as job growth slows. The labor market is only slowing at the margin, with job gains in July being the second smallest since December of 2020. The unemployment rate is hovering around levels last seen more than 50 years ago. There were 1.6 job openings for every unemployed person in June. Claims relative to the size of the labor market are way below the 280,000 level that economists say would signal a significant slowdown in job growth. Data next week on the number of people receiving benefits after an initial week of aid, a proxy for hiring, will offer more. Data next week on the number of people receiving benefits after an initial week of aid, a proxy for hiring, will offer more clues on the health of the labor market in August. And when that happens, we will be sure to report on the newscast here on that Thursday. But with that, that concludes our segment on the economy for this week. see. Okay. Let's get that. Now, if there is news you want us to see, or if there's news you want to see us cover on the Roundup, or if you'd like to join us on one of our panels, including the News Roundup, here's how to let us know. First, you can get us on Discord. Discord is the easiest way to get a hold of us. We are on Discord. We're there. We have our own server. Join it. You can just ping me. Be like, hey, I want to be on the program after you agree to the rules. And we can get you on. Talk about whatever. I'm pretty much down to talk about most things. Okay. Real life aside to a degree. I'm not a private person, but I'm not putting that shit on the internet. So that's what it is. You can also get a hold of us on Mastodon at CSP Cypher at federated.press. Mastodon is where we're doing a lot of our microblogging. I have a bot set up, so I'm sharing quotes, sharing videos there on a regular basis, posting on there when I can. So it's a little bit more active than our other social medias. Still have a Twitter, not really using it, so I'm not going to promote it. We are also on Threads at Crowdsourced Poll, which is the same as our Instagram account, Crowdsourced Politics. And so you can find us on Threads. And you can also find us on Facebook at Crowdsourced Tribune on Facebook. Maybe it isn't me. Glad to see you tuning into the show. Even though doesn't matter that you're late. We appreciate the views. We're doing pretty good. I hope you're doing well yourself. I saw that you are doing a tour, so that's cool, man. Hopefully you'll come through when I'm around again. But yeah, those are how you can get a hold of us. But let's continue on now with the newscast, getting into some more news, the news that you came here for. Of course, we're going to have to talk about it. Everybody's going to be talking about it for the next couple of weeks at least. We're a little late to the party actually because it happened earlier this week. What are we talking about? Of course, we are talking about Trump's latest indictment in Georgia, with Trump plus 18 others on RICO charges. Let's get into it. Former President Donald Trump was criminally indicted Monday for a fourth time in the state of Georgia, along with 18 others. There has been way too much spin and not nearly enough factual explanation, so the Roundup is once again going behind the headlines where facts live and clickbait goes to die. Here are the 19 people named in that indictment. We'll go over that now. Where is it? So from left to right, I know this is hard to see and some of those are blurry because the image was small. We had to grab it from the internet small, but we'll go from left to right here and just read them off. So we have Donald Trump, Rudy Giuliani, Trump's top lawyer, America's mayor, and now America's bane. Rudy Giuliani, Mark Meadows, White House chief of staff at the time. John Eastman, the mastermind behind the slate of electors change. Keith Cheesebro, what a name, man. Just cheese and grin all over the place with that one. He is a pro-Trump lawyer. Jeffrey Clark was top Justice Department official at the time of these alleged crimes were committed. Jenna Ellis was a top Trump campaign lawyer. Robert Cheerley, lawyer who promoted fraud claims. And we'll talk about Jenna Ellis a little bit later because it's funny as fuck. We got Mike Roman, Trump campaign official. David Schaefer, Georgia GOP chair and one of the fake electors. Sean Still, state senator and fake GOP elector. Stephen Lee, pastor tied to intimidation of election officials. Yes, the intimidation stuff is serious, and we'll talk about it. Harrison Floyd, Trump activist tied to intimidation of election workers as well. Publicist, we have a publicist, Tivian Kuti, publicist tied to intimidation of election workers. Sidney Powell, the Kraken, Trump campaign lawyer. Kathy Litham, fake GOP elector tied to Coffee County breach. We'll talk about that all as well. Scott Hall, tied to Coffee County election brief as well. We have Misty Hampton, Coffee County elections. Yep, just elections. And Ray Smith, Trump campaign attorney. I don't know what you're talking about here. Give me information. Maybe it isn't me. Maybe it isn't me about that. That's funny. But I'm sure you're talking about Lindsay Ellis. Anyways. So those are the 19 people. Our coverage begins with an analysis of the case by attorney Ron Flipowiski for the Midas Touch Network. Flipowiski was involved in Republican politics for decades, is a former federal prosecutor in Georgia, and one of the few lawyers in America who has defended a complex RICO jury trial and has won. According to his analysis, this is how the conspiracy played out according to indictment. Rudy Giuliani, Jenna Ellis, and Sidney Powell, the Kraken, made false statements at a press conference in November of 2020 with wild accusations of fraud. Trump, Mark Meadows, and John McEntee draft a memo for their plan to disrupt and delay counting electoral votes from Trump, Mark Meadows, and John McEntee draft a memo for their plan to disrupt and delay counting electoral votes from 6 states on January 6. Pence was to refuse to count those states and return the issue to the state legislatures, who would then adopt the alternate slate of Trump electors, citing fraud claims. Rudy, Jenna, and John Eastman and Atlanta lawyer Ray Smith solicited 14 Georgia senators to sign off on their fake electors based on voter fraud. Rudy and Trump made separate phone calls to the president of the Georgia Senate claiming voter fraud. Trump calls Governor Brian Kemp to pressure him to call a special session. Kemp refused. Trump then tweets that Kemp and Lieutenant Governor Duncan are ignoring fraud and refusing to call a special session. This begins a pattern where Trump would lie, Georgia officials would say he is wrong, then Trump would tweet to his millions of followers that they are being traitors and the public should pressure them to go along with the scheme. This happened over and over. Powell hires a firm to illegally breach voting machines to collect data to try to show voters were flipped. Eastman and Georgia lawyer Robert Cheeley plan to set up a meeting in 6 states where alternate slates of electors could be selected and would sign false certificates for Trump. Cleely sends an email to Georgia Senator saying Eastman told him a special session must be called immediately, where the Georgia legislature would approve the alternate electors on the grounds of fraud. A Patriot call to action is tweeted calling on people to pressure Georgia officials to call a special session. Trump has campaign official Bill White get personal and contact info on the Georgia Senate president and majority leader. White sends the info to Rudy. Trump then calls the Speaker of the House to demand a special session. Trump then calls the Georgia Attorney General, asking him to investigate false claims of fraud and to join the lawsuit filed by other state attorney generals in Texas. Trump and Eastman call Republican National Committee Chair Ronna McDaniel Trump and Eastman call Republican National Committee Chair Ronna McDaniel to ask her to help them recruit people to serve as fake electors. Trump's attorney, Ken Cheesebro, man, what a name, writes a memo to Trump campaign attorney outlining how the fake elector scheme would work. Documents were then sent out to the state GOP chairs for the 6 contested states for the fake electors to sign. Rudy then testifies to the Georgia House the following fabricated things. Video showed election workers stealing votes. Ruby Freeman was using USB ports to flip votes. This should be noted here that Ruby Freeman has since gotten death threats and people stalking her at her home and had to have security provided to her due to all this stuff. which should be considered a defamation suit, and I hope that she sues. As well as 96,000 fraudulent mail-in ballots were counted. These are all things that were fabricated according to the indictment. These contentions were in fact false. Rudy calls a Wisconsin GOP official to tell him to keep the fake elector scheme secret. Shh, don't tell anybody. It's a secret. Cheesebro sends an email to Rudy with multiple different plans to disrupt or delay counting the electoral votes on January 6th. Rudy sends an email telling everyone in each state to keep the fake electors' meetings secret. Gotta keep it a secret, bro. Trump tweets out, quote, "Demand this clown call a special session now," referring to Brian Kemp. Fake electors in 6 states meet and sign false certificates under oath that they were, quote, "the duly elected and qualified electors for their states." Illinois pastor Stephen Lee is recruited to drive to Ruby Freeman's house in an attempt to coerce her into falsely confessing to fraud. Wow. Jesus Christ. Getting the pastor involved, man. You can't be doing that to somebody that's religious. They gonna, man, come on. God isn't supposed to be a force for evil? Come on. When Freeman refused to speak to Lee, he asked Harris Floyd, with Black Voices for Trump, to help him. Ah, good on you, Lee. He said he thought Freeman wouldn't speak to him because he's white. Okay. Okay. Cool. Rudy and Paul meet with Trump at the White House to discuss strategy, which included seizing voting machines and appointing Sidney Powell as special counsel to investigate said fraud. Powell hires a firm to hack and copy voting data from Dominion voting machines. Meadows flies to Georgia and attempts to observe an audit of signature verification ballots by investigators. He is denied entry because he is denied entry because it isn't a public meeting. Trump then calls the chief investigator, tells him that he won, and pressures him to find fraud. Quote, "When the right answer comes out, you'll be praised." Eastman then sends an email to Cheesebro saying that the best plan was to get Pence or Chuck Grassley if Pence was absent for whatever reason. That's not ominous at all, is it? To act boldly and be challenged, because that would cause a delay that could throw things back to state legislatures. Meadows then offers to pay the chief investigator out of Trump campaign funds if he will speed up the audit. That doesn't sound legal to me. Trump then asked AG Jeffrey Rosen and Deputy AG Richard Donahue to, quote, "just say the election was corrupt and leave the rest to me." Gotta leave it to me. They refused. Man, just every step of the way, man, there's just somebody that's like, I don't know, like, I want to be MAGA, but this is a bit much. And that is the only reason this plan didn't succeed. Fucking wild, dude. Jeffrey Clark then writes up a document falsely claiming that the DOJ, quote, identified significant concerns that may have impacted the outcome of the election. Clark then asked Rosen and Donahue to sign it so he can send it to Kemp. They still refuse. Bare minimum, but good job on y'all. Trump then tweets that Kemp should resign. A hearing is then held before the Georgia Senate, where the 3 Trump witnesses gave the following false testimony. Rudy testified falsely that the same ballots were counted 5 times, 2,560 felons voted, and 10,315 dead people voted. Ray Smith testified falsely that the Secretary of State admitted 8,000 people voted illegally and claimed that the Secretary of State said the election was only 90% accurate. Cheeley falsely testified that election workers counted some ballots over and over again. It's like they don't know how these counting machines work, dude. Like, this isn't the 90s. It's not just like a Scantron they put in. It reads the header of the fucking... It reads the numbers on the ballot and it like has systems in place to stop double counting or flag double counting. Come on. Yes, there are instances of double counting. They are found because there are systems in place to stop them from going through. Jeez, man. And people don't want, like, people want hand counted ballots, right? And then they want these type of people to be in charge of hand counting those ballots. And they don't assume there will be more fuckery being done. I'm not for black box voting. Every single voting system should be basically public information with security in mind, so it can't be hackable, okay? So you should be able to understand how they work, but with caveats, of course, because doing a full open source code on a voting machine would be stupid. But there should be a paper trail, but there should be things in place that make this process more or less automatic. And it stops these things. Same thing with voter registration. A lot of this stuff could be done away with, and the concerns could be completely alleviated with just more, for lack of a better term, automation. It's fucking ridiculous. But continuing on, Jenna Ellis then wrote a memo to Trump that Pence should not open the envelopes with the votes from the 6 states because they were in dispute. Trump and Eastman then file an injunction against Kemp, citing multiple false claims of fraud. Again, these are fraud, right? They're being charged with fraud because you can say whatever you want, but if you're lying and trying to use those lies to steal an election, then it becomes a crime. Again, it's not a free speech issue. Earlier that same day, Eastman had sent a memo to Trump campaign attorneys that he knew that some of the allegations of fraud in the lawsuit were false. Trump and Meadows then call Brad Raffensperger on a recorded phone call. Trump makes 12 different false statements in that call. Trump then tweets out that Raffensperger won't listen to him. He has no clue, he says. Lee, Harrison Floyd, and Kanye West publicist Kevin Cudi also make 11 different phone calls to Ruby Freeman. She won't talk to them. Cudi then flies to Georgia from Chicago and drives to Freeman's house. Cudi told Freeman's neighbor she was a crisis manager and was there to help her. What they did to Ruby Freeman is fucking ridiculous, dude. Oh man, if Democrats are not like teeing up just the biggest civil fucking lawsuit for her so that she can win and just take a bunch of Trump's family's money, they are wildly inept at this, because just the sheer amount of fuckery that had went on against this poor election worker is just really bad. It is like there was no reason to do any of this at all. There's no reason to visit her house, to stalk her, to call her 50,000 times a day, to try to get her to falsify records, and then go and call her a fraudster on a massive platform when you have rabid fans that will die for you. One of them did. That's how serious they take Trump's sayings, right? At least one of them did. It's ridiculous. Leaders need to be held to a higher standard. And if we're not doing that, we're doing things at the most barest minimum of levels wrong. And this should be something that everyone agrees with. Even Republicans, even conservatives, even Trump lovers should agree what was done to Ruby was wrong. They should. Doesn't mean that they will. Continuing on though, Cudi finally meets with Freeman for an hour and offers her protection and help if she confesses to fraud. She asks her to sign a statement that committed fraud. Freeman refuses. Trump then tweets, "The VP has the power to reject fraudulent chosen electors." Eastman then meets with Pence Chief of Staff Mark Short to get Pence to reject the electors. Trump then meets with Pence. Pence refuses to go along with it. Trump told him he was naive and lacked courage. Trump later called Pence and tried again. Trump then calls Pence yet again and tells him, "You got to be tough tomorrow." Trump then puts out a statement falsely claiming that Pence agreed with him that he has the power to reject electors. The indictment goes on to detail what happened on January 6th, which we've covered on this program extensively. The indictment then lays out the scheme orchestrated by Sidney Powell, in which they hacked voting machines in Coffee County, took ballots, took confidential voter info, data, and software illegally. That is where we're at. But they're being charged with RICO, and it's very important to understand what RICO is. So let's go ahead and get into that as well. So Flip a Whiskey analysis also explains the RICO statute. Congress enacted the RICO statute decades ago as a powerful tool to break up the mafia. Rudy Giuliani pioneered the use of RICO to bring down members of the New York Mafia. And ironically, he finds himself now indicted under the same statute. Imagine being the pioneer of the thing and having it used against you. Mine, how the mighty have fallen. It's almost like ideology is a cancer. Now, RICO has been used in state and federal courts to prosecute white-collar fraud, criminal street gangs, drug trafficking organizations, and a host of other criminal enterprises. The statute is designed as a mechanism to convict the leaders of criminal enterprises and hold them accountable for the crimes committed by their underlings, even though they didn't directly order each specific crime. It's to basically be like, hey man, there's enough circumstantial evidence around this that you should have known that this was going on, and you're really giving them a deal you can't refuse, right? Some Godfather stuff. It's to get around that, the whole ambiguity of orders being given. You know, you have he gave me a nod, and so I knew that he wanted me to go whack the guy. That kind of stuff, right? That's why it was done. Just say the word and it's done. All right, boss, I understand. You know, that sort of stuff. And that's why it was done. Now, to prove RICO, though, a prosecutor must prove that a group of individuals were organized and put together to accomplish an unlawful objective. They must also prove that there was some kind of structure or organization with various people receiving directions from above and carrying out certain missions in furtherance of the criminal's objective. RICO statutes typically require 2 or 3 predicated acts be committed by each of the charged defendants. In the Trump RICO indictment, he is charged with organizing a criminal conspiracy to attempt to overturn the 2020 election. His co-defendants are charged with joining that conspiracy and committing unlawful acts to accomplish the goal. These acts include false statements and perjury, impersonating public officials, forgery, filing false documents, computer theft, and hacking, fraud, theft of documents, and tampering with witnesses. The indictment outlines 41 counts in the indictment based on 161 criminal acts taken in furtherance of the alleged conspiracy. So that is where we are with the RICO and why Trump is being charged in the way he is. Now, Trump is to surrender next week. So arrest warrants were issued for all 19 defendants. DA Fonwy Willis set a deadline for surrender for August 25th. The latest indictment will provide the former president with a new experience, having his mugshot and fingerprint taken, according to CNN. Negotiations between Trump's lawyers and the Fulton County District Attorney's Office are ongoing, but initial signals from Trump's team suggest they are currently in talks about a potential surrender date in the coming week. Although authorities in Fulton County must collaborate with the Secret Service to organize Trump's next arraignment, Fulton County Sheriff Pat Labatt has expressed his intention to handle these defendants just like any other, which includes taking mugshots and obtaining fingerprints. Criminal defendants in Fulton County are booked at Rice Street Jail. So what has come of this? Well, Trump has reportedly plans to disclose irrefutable evidence of fraud in the 2020 election this coming Monday to counter the new indictment in Georgia. Trump's claims fall in line with his position on his previous 3 indictments since leaving the White House, where he has maintained his innocence and called the dozens of charges a witch hunt. According to a report from ABC News, Trump's legal advisors are worried he may be saying something that will make it harder for them to defend him. According to ABC News sources, quote, Trump's legal advisors have told him that holding such a press conference with dubious claims of voter fraud will only complicate his legal problems, and some of his attorneys have advised him to cancel it. In other reporting today from ABC News, authorities in Georgia said that they're investigating threats targeting members of the grand jury that handed up the indictment. Fulton County Sheriff's Office said investigators are working to trace the origin of the threats after the names of grand jury members and other personal information was posted online. The Sheriff's Office said other local, state, and federal law enforcement agencies were assisting in the matter. Quote, we take this matter very seriously and are coordinating with our law enforcement partners to respond quickly to any credible threat and to ensure the safety of those individuals who carried out their civic duty, the Sheriff's Office said in a statement. Though the grand jury's proceedings were secret, the unredacted names of the grand jury members were included in the indictment. This is required by Georgia law. And it's in part done to give criminal defendants a chance to challenge the composition of a grand jury. The indictment itself is a public record. The Georgia grand jurors aren't the only ones to face threats over their involvement in the 4 pending criminal cases against Trump either. A woman in Texas has been charged with making an August 5th phone call threatening to kill U.S. District Judge Tanya Cutton, who is overseeing the federal case against Trump in Washington. An FBI agent on August 9th killed an armed Utah man facing arrest on charges of making violent threats against President Joe Biden and law enforcement officials involved in prosecuting Trump as well. And breaking news just from, thank you, Nikki, appreciate it. Authenticate, eat what? Seriously? You got a non-Twitter? I'm not authenticating my account, not right now. Okay, Trump canceled. All right, so breaking news over from the Associated Press is Trump cancels press conference on election fraud, citing attorney advice. Wow, somebody actually made it through to the guy. So let's look into it. So according to the Associated Press, Trump now says he won't be holding a press conference next week to unveil what he claims is new evidence of fraud in the 2020 election in Georgia, citing advice of lawyers. No compelling evidence of wide-scale fraud, Trump alleges, has emerged in 2.5 years since the election. Republican officials in the state where 3 recounts confirm Trump lost to Joe Biden have long said he lost legitimately. Rather than releasing the report on the rigged and stolen Georgia 2020 presidential election on Monday, my lawyers would prefer putting this, I believe, irrefutable and overwhelming evidence, lies, to informal legal files as we fight to dismiss the disgraceful indictment, he wrote on his social media site Thursday evening. He added, therefore, the news conference is no longer necessary. For this, the goal isn't to prove that there was irrefutable evidence that the election was stolen. This is a Hail Mary for the defense. This is a defense thing. This is to try to prove a state of mind that Trump believed that these were lies, and therefore everything that he did, or sorry. He believed these lies, and therefore everything he did isn't criminal. He was just trying to legitimately get power back. That's the defense here. But we know for a fact that nothing is going to happen from this. There's not. Like, I don't care what I care what the evidence might say, because there's always the small modicum of a chance that it does prove like, oh shit, maybe something actually happened. But that is an infinitesimally small chance of actually being true. So I don't necessarily care. That's where we're at. Finally, though, it seems that these indictments are actually showing an impact on Trump's 2024 chances. So Donald Trump's defense against his four indictments are characteristically absolutist, according to reporting from the Washington Post. The phone call with Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, which undergrinds Trump's newest indictment, was a, quote, perfect phone call. The 91 criminal charges against Trump aren't just overzealous, but born of Maryland witch hunts. Bristling at a question about a hypothetical plea deal in Georgia, Trump said, "We did nothing wrong." These comments are part of sales pitch that even the GOP isn't buying anymore. These are all lies, all right? As of right now, these are lies. And increasingly, few Americans are actually believing those lies that Trump is telling here, according to new polling. And while Republicans overwhelmingly say they don't think Trump broke the law, most, even a very strong majority, fault him in some measure. In an Associated Press Norick poll, 1 in 5 or fewer Americans say they believe Trump did nothing wrong in each of his 4 legal cases. In both the classified documents case and the Georgia case, the poll was conducted before this week's indictment. It was set at 15%. That means 15% of people believe Trump. The rest do not. Or a small combination of don't know yet. And just 14% of people said Trump did nothing wrong in the Manhattan case involving an alleged cover-up of hush money payments to Stormy Daniels. In the first 3 cases, around half said Trump did something illegal, while the rest chose the middle ground option of saying unethical. Well, it might not be illegal, but it's certainly unethical. Only about 1/3 saw illegality in the Manhattan case. The poll echoes 2 CNN polls in recent months that have shown just 15% of Americans said Trump did, quote unquote, nothing wrong in the classified documents case. It also comes the same day as a separate survey from the Marist College shows just 22% of overall said Trump had done, quote unquote, nothing wrong in various cases that he's facing. This means that some combination, the majority of people think that he did something wrong. A larger percentage, rather. These numbers are the lowest of Trump's political career. Last year, the Post recapped 17 polls that asked this question about a variety of Trump controversies. Only once did Trump's nothing wrong number dip below 20% on the relatively small, bore, and less publicized issue of his charitable foundation allegedly misspending money. A big reason for the drop? The decline in Republicans who subscribe to Trump's nothing to see here claims. Despite the GOP standing by Trump, there is a significant and growing universe of right-leaning voters who object to his actions in these cases. Now, these are general election voters, not necessarily primary voters. So don't be surprised if Trump still sweeps through the primary and faces issues into the general election, despite all these legitimate claims of his criminality. Now, they might stick to Trump out of partisan loyalty or even a belief that he's being persecuted. Only about 1 in 10 Republicans in these polls generally believe he broke the law, but that doesn't mean that they approve of what he did. It's difficult to see this tipping the scales against Trump for a large number of them, but it doesn't need to in order to have a significant impact on the 2024 general election. even discussing a few percentage points worth of voters who would otherwise back a GOP nominee could swing a race in our increasingly tight American elections and our partisan divide. But that, my friends, concludes this segment of the News Roundup. All right. Let's go ahead and Nikki, if you're still watching, I know that we said no, we're going to cover it. Never mind. All right. Give me 1 second. I gotta pee real quick. I'll be right back. We'll continue on with the newscast right when I get back. So I apologize, but I have to pee. And we're back. Sorry about that, everybody. I appreciate you sticking around while I had to do that real quick. All right, let's get into some more news, though. We just talked about Trump. Now let's talk about Trump's once biggest rival. That, of course, I am talking about Ron DeSantis and what he revealed about his debate strategy. Now, Ron, the uncharismatic person that he is likely not the challenger we all feared on the left. Now, he is very much worse than Trump when it comes to the ability to move the levers of government power to get what he wants, but he's not good at politicking. And we're going to talk about that now. So according to the New York Times, a firm associated with the super PAC that has effectively taken over DeSantis' presidential campaign posted online hundreds of pages of blunt advice, research memos, and internal polling in early nominating states. The reason? To guide the former governor ahead of the high-stakes Republican presidential debate next Wednesday in Milwaukee. The trove of documents provided an extraordinary glimpse into the thinking of the DeSantis operation about a debate the candidate's advisors see as crucial. Quote, "There are 4 must-dos," one of the memos urged Mr. DeSantis, who the document refers to as GRD, or Governor Ron DeSantis. 1. Attack Joe Biden and the media at least 3 to 5 times. State Governor Ron DeSantis' positive vision at least 2 or 3 times. Hammer Vivek Ramaswamy in a response. Just go to town. Defend Donald Trump in absentia in response to Chris Christie's attack. Wow, man, like if you want a candidate to do well when the biggest appeal of his primary opponent in a race is the fact that he's authentic, you just torpedoed everything. All this seems as cold and calculated and like uncharismatic and too refined, not hard enough around the edges, not not gruff enough. Like, you're telling, like, you don't release this stuff. You have this be done by, like, just happenstance or seemingly happenstance. You prepare them, but don't release the information ahead of time. This is why I think that some of the people that are in the DeSantis camp are actually anti-DeSantis. Okay? Because this is like the complete opposite of what you would expect a normal campaign to do. There seems, in my mind, I will take evidence to the contrary, but right now, in my mind, I am convinced that this is self-sabotage by the Ron DeSantis campaign because they don't like him and they want Trump to win. That's what this looks like to me. That's how bad releasing this information is. You can't have the veil of authenticity be around if you just throw it off and give everybody what you're planning on doing. Now, fucking Ramaswamy is going to be expecting DeSantis to like punch him in the face during the debate. Everybody knows he's going to defend Trump from Chris Christie. Like, he's going to do it because Trump's not there. Like, everybody's going to attack Joe Biden in the media. Like, that's already going to be a thing. You didn't need to state that. Why? Why are you doing this? No one gives a shit about positive visions, dude. They want to know how you're going to own the libs. This is so stupid. I don't understand how bad people are at this. I'm just sitting here in my middle class lifestyle and I'm just like, you guys have been rich your whole fucking lives. DeSantis went to fucking Harvard. He was a officer in the US military as a fucking intelligence officer, human officer, lawyer. This fucking lawyer for human. He knows what the fuck he's supposed to be doing. And it's still this bad. I guess you really can't remake Reagan in a lab. You just can't do it. Shame. Sorry, neocons. Sorry, Freedom Caucus people. You can't get your boy back. You can't drip, drip, drip with a little bit of juice, Reagan juice, and just grow another one out of a random 2-size suit wearing person out. And it's not like that's where Republican voters want right now either. So it's just that bad. It's that bad. But it can get worse. And it does get worse. So let's continue on with it. Now, the Times was alerted to the existence of the documents by a person not connected to the DeSantis campaign or the super PAC. After the outlet reached out to the Never Back Down, the PAC in question, for comment today, the group removed from the website a key memo summarizing the suggested strategy for the debate. Like I said, self-sabotage, dude. There's somebody in there that wants Trump to win and just showing how bad DeSantis is. Super PACs are barred by law from strategizing in private with political campaigns. So if it's public, it's fine. Okay. Jeez. To avoid running foul of those rules, it's not unusual for outside groups to post polling documents in the open. They are usually posted in an obscure corner of the internet where insiders know to look. And us plebes, we don't know. Posting such documents online is risky. The news media or rivals can discover them, and the advice can prove embarrassing, just as it did here. Alright, so it's possible this wasn't self-sabotage, but the fact that they took that advice down for the debate makes me think that it's self-sabotage. Somebody released that information when it wasn't supposed to. What is unusual here, though, is that a super PAC posted detailed documents on its own website. Again, more evidence in my mind that this is self-sabotage. Those details included an exact estimate of turnout in the Iowa caucuses, now 216,561, and including one New Hampshire poll with more than 400 pages of detailed findings. The documents are so strategy heavy that it appears that the super PAC is trying to dictate how DeSantis should conduct himself on the debate stage. What's missing from the debate materials is a document focused on Trump, who has been attacking DeSantis mercilessly for months. The main strategy memo for the debate contains no mention of policy, because they don't care. Let me say that again. The main strategy memo for the debate contains no mention of policy, because they don't care. And the advice steers DeSantis away from talking about specific solutions, because doing so won't get him headlines. That's true. Talking about what you're going to do for the American people, that's very policy focused, like Elizabeth Warren tried to do, is going to break through the media bubble. It's just not. Key among the documents is one titled Debate Memo, dated August 15th, which cynically describes how DeSantis, who has been battered by critical coverage and has struggled to capture the attention in the face of Mr. Trump's indictments, and has been ripped to shreds by left and right-leaning people on the internet for his inability to be a human. like okay. Like we gotta put this up. Like this man is not a real person. This is not a real person. I'm telling you. Come on. No. Okay, hold on. God dang ads. Why are you showing me ads independent from the UK? Come on, man. Here it is. You can't tell me this is a real person.
Story within the last half hour. We're checking in with Ryan Elijah, and we sort of have been joking about worst kept secret because we knew this was coming, right? But it's still not officially. We're going to get it, Elijah.
Oh, come on, where is it? I don't care about the analysis. Just show me the. Okay. Stop it. Here we go. You can't tell me this is a real person. There's no way. There's no way. Look at that. Like, laugh like human. That's what this is saying to me. Laugh like human. Come on. Oh, I have not had it up on the screen the whole time. No, I feel silly. Laugh like human. Yep, that's what this is saying. Wow. Yeah, okay. Sure, buddy. Sure. Anyways. Continuing on, though. Addressed simply to interested parties, the memo describes Roger Ailes' orchestra pit theory, quoting the now deceased Fox News executive's maximum that a candidate who lays out a comprehensive plan on foreign policy will draw less coverage than one who accidentally falls off the debate stage. To that end, the memo lists potential orchestra pit moments, bringing with one drama-making opportunity, complete with a recommendation for a Trump-style insult. Quote, take a sledgehammer to Vic Ramaswamy. Fake Vivek, or Vivek the fake. That doesn't rhyme. Why are you guys so bad at this? Bro, why are you so bad? This is... How do people get elected at all? If this is like the top Republican strategists that exist, my God, liberals, dude, there's just so much that could be done here. Jeez. Fake Vivek. Vivek the fake. Okay. Sure. Related documents, runs nearly 5,000 words across 17 pages, show that DeSantis' operation advises portraying Ramaswamy as an inauthentic conservative. Internal polling contained in the trove of documents shows Ramaswamy surging in New Hampshire, which may have inspired the attack line. New Hampshire is a particular political beast. It has a lot more libertarian-leaning conservatives in the state and libertarian left-leaning people in the state. It's a very strange state. A lot of people, a lot of hippies, a lot of preppers. Like it's a weird mash of politics there. So Ramaswamy doing very well in New Hampshire, according to their internal polling, makes a bit of sense. Doesn't mean he'll be a breakaway candidate or a dark horse, but less weirder things have happened. Now, Ramaswamy was at 1% in New Hampshire in April, but rose to 11% in an early August survey, according to the documents, because he's been hitting all the conservative shows. He's been on Newsmax, he's been on OAN, he's been on Fox News, he's been on Glenn Beck's program. He's talked to Hannity. He's talked to everybody. He's talked to a lot of people. He's doing the things that you need to do in order to be a decent candidate, and so good for him. Like, credit where credit is due. I don't agree with the guy on pretty much anything, but he's doing the right thing. So more power to not more power to him. Credit to him for doing the things that is effective. So the debate prep memo also urges DeSantis, though, to defend Trump when Chris Christie attacks him, with a specific suggestion for a tagline accusing Christie of appealing mainly to Democrats. Jeez. Here's what the memo says, okay? Trump isn't here, so let's just leave him alone. He's too weak to defend himself here. We're all running against him. I don't think we want to join forces with someone on this stage who's auditioning for a show on MSNBC. Okay. All right. Chris Christie is not auditioning for a show on MSNBC. Would he take it if it was offered? Probably. He would be the one conservative voice that just really stuck at the Trump that's a contributor to give the Republican side of the stage to somebody for MSNBC to have their little Hannity and Combs show. Okay. Their little, we got Republicans on here with Morning Joe, right? That kind of bullshit. That's not what's motivating Christie. What's motivating Chris Christie is the fact that Trump almost killed him and didn't show him any loyalty at all, or take his advice really, for when he was trying to help Trump with being president and campaigning in 2020. That's it. That's what it is. It's spite driven. It's the fact that he knows that Trump is just bad for the country, and he's really spiteful because he almost got him killed. That's what's going on. Now, in response, though, to these documents, Brian Jones, the executive director of the super PAC supporting Christie, sent out a blast email to interested parties titled Debate Strategy for CJC. Chris Christie. The only thing in the body of the email was, be yourself, tell it like it is. Great. That's a great counterpunch. Again, everything that is here is like very inauthentic. Even if DeSantis is authentically this kind of schmo, right? This kind of person, schlub, right? Even if he's this kind of person, even if he's like, meticulous and stuff, like authentically like this, it comes off as very inauthentic and fake. And so be yourself, tell it like it is a perfect retort to this, because that is what Republican voters generally want. They don't want some refined, poll-tested, elitist-like candidate. They want a person that walks the populist walk that you can have a beer with. We're still doing with that. Liberals are not necessarily elitist, but they're becoming the party of middle and upper middle class and the elite adjacent, and also the working poor, but not, the working blue collar middle class. There's a weird shift happening there. Tiberius is correct to this a little bit, not as much as probably. I don't agree with him fully on it. He's correct here a little bit on it. And yeah, so if you're doing this, you're not gonna win, bro. I'm glad that DeSantis seemingly has no chance to win now whatsoever. It's just sad, though. You were supposed to be the chosen one for the anti-Trumpers that still wanted Trump, and yet here we are. Now, the DeSantis documents suggest saying that Trump's time has passed and that DeSantis should be seen as carrying the torch for the movement he inspired. The strategy memo provides DeSantis with an elaborate script for which to position himself in relation to Trump. He could say that Trump was a breath of fresh air and the first president to tell the elite where to shove it, and then add that the former president was attacked all the time, provoked attacks all the time, and it was nonstop. DeSantis could then argue that Trump, who has now been indicted 4 times, faces, quote, so many distractions that it's almost impossible for him to focus on moving the country forward, and that this election is too important. We need someone that can fight for you instead of fighting for himself. These are actually not bad threading of the needle here. Not bad actually. It's a shame that it was publicly announced. Now it's going to come off as fake, but not bad strategy, to be honest with those. Those are actually pretty decent, in my opinion. Now, they're decent. The best thing to do would be just to attack Trump. Just hammer him, right? Because if you're going to come for the king, you got to come correct, right? Don't go off half-cocked and miss. You got to go for the kill shot. And because Trump's base is so wedded to him, despite everything that is happening, and that base makes up a large percentage of the primary voters in the Republican primary. And again, this could change a little bit. Maybe these indictments are actually having an impact on the primary. Doesn't look like it. Still possible. He should have just gone for the head, honestly. And absent that, you shouldn't have ran. Everybody is defending Trump because they're too worried about losing his supporters are coming off cowardly. And that's weakness. And if it's one thing that the people that are in the Republican primary don't want, is weakness, or at least obvious weakness. They smell blood in the water and they're coming for it. Furthermore, though, the memo supplies a YouTube link as an inspiration. It's an ad produced by Win It Backpack, a group linked to the anti-tax organization, the Club for Growth, that has been spending heavy to run ads in Iowa. The spot features a man describing himself as a disillusioned Trump voter, expressing concerns about Mr. Trump's electability, effectively creating a permission structure for voters to move away from him. The strategy memo also highlights one of Mr. DeSantis' long-running political vulnerabilities, his reputation for awkwardness or aloofness on the campaign trail, by suggesting that he, quote, invoke a personal anecdote story about family, kids, Casey showing emotions. Taken together, the document revealed the remarkable extent to which the financially struggling DeSantis campaign is relying upon the resources of his super PAC, which raised $130 million in the first half of the year. The outside group is paying for research on DeSantis' rivals, strategic insights, and polling, all traditionally the work of campaigns themselves. So they're running his campaign. This is essentially what's going on here. Recent polling shows DeSantis' net favorability among Republicans. The difference between the percentage of voters who view him favorably and the percentage who view him unfavorably had dropped from 65 percentage points in March to 26% in August. All because of him running against Trump, his aloofness, his inauthenticity. Everything that is going on is a direct tie back to running against Trump and being cowardly and not going for the head. And then being the awkward goofball that he actually is. Importantly, though, DeSantis has also declined in terms of serving as Republican voters' second choice. Jeez, that lack of charisma, man. He rolled a 1 on his charisma check, and it's just tumbling from there. And it dropped from 32% in March to just 17% in August, tied with both Tim Scott and Ramaswamy. Recent polling also indicates that Christie has pulled ahead of DeSantis in some states. The internal polling included in the documents about Iowa was less detailed, but appeared to show Trump leading in the state with 40% of support, while DeSantis is just at 19. Before I conclude this segment, I do see this comment from Maybe It Isn't Me, and I don't think so, actually. DeSantis will be Trump's bitch or VP pick. I don't think that's happening anymore because he ran against him. I don't know who we're going to see as Trump's VP pick, but I don't think it's going to be DeSantis. It might be somebody picked by the Republican National Committee again, or suggested by them. But given how the RNC hasn't really played into Trump too much lately, it's a wild card. There's a small possibility that it could be Tulsi Gabbard. There's another possibility it could be Tucker Carlson. Don't rule both of those people out. There's a lot, for whatever reason, Tulsi is really liked by a good percentage of Republicans, but also liked by fringe people of the left and a little bit of some anti-war people. And so if he picks her, could sway them to vote for him despite everything. But it's not a sure thing. I think it's lower than him picking Tucker Carlson, assuming Tucker Carlson even wants to run. But it's still a possibility. It's going to be somebody that isn't from the primary. I don't think it's going to be somebody from the primary. I don't think that's what's happening this time around. But when we know, we'll let you know. But that concludes this segment of the News Roundup. Now, we had other stories we wanted to cover, but I spent a bit too long on pontificating, so I'll cover those at a later date. So if you do not know, we at the News Roundup like to cover News of the Weird as kind of a palate cleanser to cap off the night. And this News of the Weird is pretty strange. It's strange in the most, in some of the best ways possible. And I need to let this ad play before it goes, and we'll get to it once the ad plays. All right. So I think you've seen this on the internet. I think you've seen this. You probably have seen this. What is this? What is this dog? This dog is a bit big to be a dog, right? Well, what we are seeing here, my friends, what we are seeing here is a Japanese native has transformed himself into a canine after forking out more than $14,000 for a custom-made collie costume, according to the New York Post. The private citizen, who goes only by Toko online, says the unusual garment has helped actualize his dream of becoming an animal. Footage shared on Toko's YouTube channel, where he boasts more than 32,000 subscribers, shows him clad in the costume as he frolics on the lawn, rolls on the floor, and plays fetch. And we'll watch some of that video now. Y'all, this guy's taking furry to the new level, man. This is, you know what? Your other furries ain't shit. This is real. This is real dog life. Let me in. Let me in, please. I'm a dog. I can't get in. I'm showing you my belly. Pet my belly. I roll over for you. You can wave like a... Dogs don't wave, but that's okay. But that... Look at that, like, how the mouth opens and everything. Man, that is a good costume. Can you bow? Can you speak? Oh, look at you. Oh, you're such a cute dog. All right. So, so that is what it is, and honestly, that's cool. Live your truth, guys. Live your truth. But anyways, that concludes our News Roundup. I know you liked what you heard because you stayed with us to the end, so please smash that like button for the algorithms. It really does help us out. We'd like to give special thanks to our Facebook community, who provided us a lot of the stories that you saw tonight, as well as some of the stories I didn't get to, but I will record post News Roundup. If you have any ideas or copy you want to see included in the copy, you can again hit us up on the Discord or on Facebook at Crowdsourced Tribune. Thank you all again for watching us, because if it wasn't for you, I would just be a person shouting into the void that is the internet. And while that is fun, because I like to hear myself talk, it's not as fun or as engaging as having you all listen to it and provide me direct feedback, and I appreciate it. Also like to give a special shout out to our copy producer, Nikki Adams, because without her, this would not be as a robust of a news roundup as it has been, since she has worked with me on this, and it has been a pleasure working with her. So I greatly appreciate your help, Nikki. Appreciate it. And like we say at Crowdsource Politics, keep your head up through the political storm.